Rob, don't forget, we have that meeting later.
That's today? Is it important?
Yes, it's important. It's with those investors from Central America about franchising the store.
Do I have to wear a suit?
Of course, it's a business meeting.
I think I'm going to sell my shares.
Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, quiet movies, loud movies. Rob, in 2023, I can't think of many businesses that are more fundamentally sound and steadily profitable than a video rental store like Rewind Video.
I mean, we know firsthand.
Movies aren't going away, and as long as there are
people keep renting people keep renting them at the stores.
They do. As long as there are movies, there will be a need to drive to rental stores, hope they have the movie you want, pay $5 to rent that movie, drive back home, watch it, and then drive back to the store the next day to return it. I mean, that's just how the world works.
Yeah, there's a reason that we never get a day off. We're here all the time.
It's a bulletproof business model, simply perfect. And you could argue that one of the many reasons that Rewind Video is such a cash cow is because of our staff recommendation shelf. As our listeners know, you and I are in charge of stocking said shelf with movies that deserve our customers' attention. Each time we rotate in new movies, we adhere to a theme. This week's theme is business.
Cha-ching. Yeah. That's our cash register.
Yeah.
Just ringing up those sales.
Now, we've talked about business in a very businessy sense. But one of the reasons that I love our staff recommendation shelf is that we often leave the door open for interpretation with our themes. And this week I have some films that maybe venture away from the expected connotation of business, but you know, business is not just a company with employees and a sign above the door. It's also, you know, an affair or a series of events. And we've done the on-the-job theme, so I was looking for some stuff that maybe steered a little bit left of center.
I'm curious what you feel like you have to justify because, well, there's only one that, like, there's not really business happening in the movie, but there's a little bit, and it's legitimate. Yeah, it's definitely legitimate business.
Yeah, business.
But yeah, I'm curious what you know how you looked at this topic.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have at least one movie that is business in the classic sense of the term. But I wanted to just see how, you know, where the boundaries of this theme would be. And, you know, I've got one movie I think that probably deserves a little bit more explanation, but I enjoyed this one. I enjoyed delving into this topic, and it was fun to find some films that fit it.
It's an interesting topic. Business runs the world.
It does. It keeps the world going, keeps the store open, the lights are on. And yeah, I think there are 6 fine films up on the shelf this evening, or about to hit the shelf, I should say. I enjoyed watching all 6 of these. They were all a good time.
Yeah, I mean, business can be good. Business can be bad. It can be big. It can be small.
It's not often, I think, that you find a film that is capturing business going swimmingly without any sort of, you know, hijinks or things going south in some way, shape, or form.
That's the nature of movies and storytelling, I think. I think generally, you know, if the business is going great, something in the personal life is not going so great.
Right. There's some
which
give and
can
take.
impact the business.
Indeed.
Right. Vice versa.
Well, you know, I think we've talked some business. I think we should get down to business.
Let's get down to business.
And jump right into our first film, which is yours.
This is mine, yes. I'm going to start us off with a new film from 2023 titled Blackberry.
This was great.
This is in the corporate drama section of the store, but the funny thing about this movie is that we carry it exclusively in the Betamax format.
Yes, of course we do.
Here's the back of the box. 2 mismatched entrepreneurs, egghead innovator Mike Lazaridis and cutthroat businessman Jim Balsillie, joined forces in an endeavor that was to become a worldwide hit in little more than a decade. the story of the meteoric rise and catastrophic demise of the world's first smartphone. Tagline, work hard, fail hard.
That's a good tagline.
It is a good tagline because that whole work hard, play hard thing was bullshit anyway.
Fuck yeah.
It's fucking stupid.
Never been true.
I think most people of a certain age know the basics of what happened to the Blackberry. It was the first big smartphone at least.
Right.
And then the iPhone came around and it just kind of got swamped.
It did.
But it never like occurred to me exactly what was going on there. Like it wasn't just that the iPhone was like a better version of what the Blackberry was. It was very much a different product.
Oh, 100%.
Because RIM, which is a funny name for a company, RIM.
Yeah. Research in Motion.
Research in Motion, yeah. They were, which is actually kind of a cool name for like a software company that like nobody has to look at the name of.
Don't acronymize it. Just keep it as Research in Motion.
Well, they're Canadian.
Yeah.
But they were kind of like completely caught off guard by the changing paradigm in the smartphone business. They were like, it was just a completely different product. And like, this movie gives the background of how this product that was once like a completely dominant product just disappeared. It's 0% of the market now. The casting here, I think, is kind of perfect. Glenn Howerton he was kind of born to play this part. He's like the perfect business asshole who just does not have time for people who don't get it. His role as Dennis on Always Sunny is a similar type of character, I would say. This guy is basically if Dennis had gone to a better school and moved into the corporate world instead of buying a bar with his buddies. Jay Baruchel is the tech guy who's like way in over his head as the co-CEO. He just doesn't really know what he's doing on the business end of it. No. Also, this is an absolutely fantastic hair movie.
The hair here is tremendous.
Yeah, it's so good. It doesn't look believable. I don't believe that this is these people's hair.
Yeah.
But it doesn't need to be believable. It conveys what it needs to convey.
Not to mention lack of hair.
Right. Well, yes. Yeah. The bald cap I consider part of the hair,
yes,
the hair art in this movie. It stands out enough that it's comedic. It conveys. It's like when you see stuff in like a sketch comedy sketch. Like it doesn't really matter if it like looks real.
Right.
It's not quite that in this, but like it doesn't look like they're real hair or anything. But it is also pretty fucking sweet.
Yeah,
definitely up there for one of the best hair movies of the year. This shows the palpable tension between innovation and business.
Yes.
Because business can drive innovation a lot of times, but it can also crush it.
Yeah, I think that. Well, I don't want to take away what you were going to say or steal your thunder or anything, but it definitely feels like in a case of RIM, business was driving things forward rather than innovation, whereas innovation was what drove Apple to launch the iPhone.
Yeah. Well, they were innovative at some point.
They were innovative, yeah, just in perhaps a more narrow way.
Yeah. Glenn Howerton, he's the villain of this story. He's the CEO of this company, but he's also the villain of this story. He's got like very questionable tactics about how he pays people and
recruits people.
How he recruits people. But also without him, BlackBerry never would have been a product. It would not have existed, at least according to the way this movie tells the story. The nerds that were running this company, they never would have dug themselves out of that hole they were in.
They were bad at business.
They were terrible at business. they basically, built all these modems. They were $1.something million in debt and like had no business, had no money coming in whatsoever. They were just, their paychecks weren't being cashed and whatever. Terrible at business. So they need somebody to sell their technology because like these sorts of products, like they showed at the beginning of the movie, nobody understands these things at first.
Yes.
And the nerds can't explain it.
No.
They're just not able to do it. And so like nobody likes the sales guys, but on some level they're necessary.
Yes. Yes.
But by trying to save the company through traditional business means, selling more units when they shouldn't be doing that, or like outsourcing to China, or like increasing the efficiency of this product that they should be abandoning and changing to something else.
Right.
That they effectively killed the product by doing that.
Yes. Yes.
And they were too focused on doing business instead of creating the next thing. They should have just sold it off to fucking Palm Pilot and moved on.
Yeah.
So business very much destroyed the BlackBerry. So I think of all the recent product biopics, I think this one's probably the best one.
This one is great. I loved Air for reasons, but this was really special. And it really, I mean, having lived through this, it was so fascinating to look back on through this lens and see behind the scenes of how these products came to market and remember a time when innovation was moving at blistering speed. You know, phones are still released today and there are minor innovations, but nothing is happening at the same pace, or, you know, things aren't changing the way they were in the early 2000s.
I guess so. I didn't have a smartphone in the BlackBerry era.
You were late to the game. Well, not late. You moved at your own pace.
I was deliberately late to the game. I held off as long as I could, and that was still 10 years ago. But I do remember when it was BlackBerries are legitimately really good phones.
Yes.
And people really believed in the product and whatnot, and then it just disappeared. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And that's because it's basically a pager. You know, they were working on pager technology, and they didn't realize that they were selling something else, which was data.
Right.
Which I don't think a lot of people didn't see coming.
No.
I gave this movie 4 stars out of 5. As did a Letterboxd reviewer named Josh Lewis, who wrote a fairly long review.
Okay.
But he closed it out by saying, Canada had one chance to dominate the world in something, and they sacrificed it by handing the keys to a Maple Leafs fan. So I know Josh Lewis is Canadian just by that sentence.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I think this does a great job of showing how business can make a great idea successful, but also how a business can destroy that idea and destroy the people around it. So I'm putting it up on the shelf this week for business.
I've already said that I really enjoyed this, and it was fun to rewatch. A couple things that I wanted to call attention to is Jay Baruchel is untapped. Well, I shouldn't say untapped, but I don't think we've seen how great he can be yet, and he just keeps getting better every time he appears in something. He's such a good actor.
He's got an energy about him that it's hard to figure out what to do with. Maybe
I think so, perhaps, but this is a perfect way to use him.
Absolutely, yeah.
Glenn Howerton also surprised me. I'm so used to seeing him on Always Sunny, and this turn was surprising but impressive.
Yeah, he's perfect for this character.
He is.
Apparently this guy was very much like this maniac.
Yeah. I don't think there's a lot of exaggeration going on. But
Matt Johnson, the director, as I forget what his character's name is, but he's great as the or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, the brains, I guess, behind.
The vibes behind the company.
Yeah, and the one who probably handled the business side of things best of all, because you get the end of the movie where they give you a little bit of backstory behind what happened to these people after the film ended, and he went on to make bank and
he sold
keep his
the
bank.
Exact right moment.
he did.
I mean, part of that seems like it was because he left the company.
Yeah.
Right before things went really bad.
Well, one of my favorite parts of this movie, for one reason or another, is the scene where they're teaching the executives in the boardroom how to use the prototype, and they're not used to using their thumbs to navigate a keyboard, and it's such second nature to navigate a phone that way now with your thumbs, as if you're typing on a keyboard the way you do on a full-size keyboard. But yeah, obviously that didn't come natural to people originally, and
I don't even remember making that transition, but I don't either. Remember it being weird,
Yeah, and.
But I started on the 3 letters per number thing.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. Well, this was a great one. I enjoyed watching this and rewatching it. So if our customers have not seen it, definitely give it a shot. It's a great start to our business theme. A lot of business here.
Super rewatchable.
It is.
It's funny. It's funny. It moves. It's got some good music. It's got a good score.
Yes. And, it takes place at a time that many of us were a part of. So
Absolutely.
all right. Well, I am moving to 2007 for my first pick. And,
Great year.
Yes. And my first selection is Eastern Promises, plucked from the Mean Business section of the store. And not we mean business, but like mean business. So back of the box synopsis here. A Russian teenager living in London dies during childbirth but leaves clues to a midwife in her journal. That journal could tie her child to a rape involving a violent Russian mob family. Tagline here is, every sin leaves a mark. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. So I'm starting here because Eastern Promises is probably the most alternative interpretation of business across my three films. Of course, like I said at the beginning, business doesn't always have to involve a store or company in a traditional sense. In Eastern Promises, business refers to the quote-unquote family business, which in this case is the Russian mafia.
Yeah, they're in the import-export business, which is very clear by that truck of stuff that pulls up.
Indeed. So this comes by way of David Cronenberg, and it stars the same guy from our last David Cronenberg movie, Viggo Mortensen. He was also in A History of Violence. We talked about that. That was on the shelf at one point. Cronenberg made that 2 years prior to this. Eastern Promises also gives us Vincent Cassel and Naomi Watts. I always like Naomi Watts. Vincent Cassel can be good. He can also be in movies like Irreversible, which are fucking horrible.
Yeah, that's not his fault.
We won't hold it against him. So this is coming from a period of Cronenberg's career where he's exploring violence. And in this movie, similar to A History of Violence, we get bursts of violence in pretty poignant ways. One scene in particular, which I'd talk about in more detail if it weren't for a request from Cronenberg to never mention this scene to people who haven't watched the film. There's some memorable stuff here. The scene in particular that I'm talking about, which I'm sure you know what.
In the bathhouse?
Yes.
Is basically, you have lot of male nudity this week in all of your movies.
All of them. Yeah.
And two of which include male nudity in basically locker rooms.
That's true.
This one has a lot of male nudity.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize that there's male nudity in all three of my movies.
There is.
Yeah. Dicks and butts. Well, after Showgirls from our last team, we needed to balance the scales a little bit, I suppose.
Yeah, you had a lot of nudity in general over the last few weeks.
I'm going to scale it back.
Scale it. Hey, I'm not telling you what to do. Customers don't seem to mind.
Maybe the running thread here is that I'm just fascinated with the human body. Whether you're eating it or just showcasing it.
Yeah, or it's being dissolved in a vat of acid.
Yes. Yeah. The things you learn at the staff recommendation show. So the back of the box sums this one up pretty well. We have a woman, played by Naomi Watts, who is suddenly thrust into a world occupied by the Russian mafia. She knows some things that they want to protect, and the film explores the tension between her trying to do what's right and the mob trying to protect their own from exposure. So why did I choose this movie? The reason I plucked this for business is twofold. So in the case of this film, the mob is literally referred to as the family business. There's one scene in particular where it goes by that name. They call it that.
Well, organized crime. When it's a family, it is the family business.
Yeah, it's a family business.
And whatever they're doing, they're not making their money from just killing people. No. They have to be doing something that's to advance whatever business interest they have.
Right, they're moving stuff around.
Yeah, because they're importing cases of wine or whatever, and 1 out of every 10 cases has stuff that they're bringing over from whatever country it's coming from. Then they're doing whatever they need to do on this side of the ocean to make money. So it is a business.
It's a business.
Yeah.
They make money.
Yes.
So. The concept of a family business in this sense is both nebulous but also strictly defined. It's clear that everyone involved in this mafia are governed by a code that's decidedly separate from the rules and laws that society abides by. But we're not necessarily introduced to what that code is specifically. However, we get a taste of it when Viggo Mortensen's character is initiated into the quote-unquote family. We also know that there's an established hierarchy to how this family business is structured. But, yeah, as you mentioned, the other interpretation of business is that these guys are moving goods. There's, a lot of shady business that's happening behind the scenes. People are murdered. Yeah. Humans are trafficked.
Well, that's the nature of organized crime. Is it's one and the same.
Yes.
Like you are making money doing things and shipping stuff around or whatever, but also like you're committing crimes.
Yeah.
That
doing
aren't
some
just
unsavory things.
I mean, even some of the business you're doing is crime.
Right.
Where illegal gambling and etc.
Yes.
But also you're killing people. But that's not just for fun. They're doing it for business reasons.
They are.
To stay out of jail or keep stuff under wraps.
Right.
There are business reasons to murder these people.
I like that we get a taste of some of the unsavory things that these characters are involved in, but not enough to make this movie overly long. It's actually kind of brisk, an hour and 40 minutes. But there's enough to establish these characters as bad people, most of them. Everyone is pretty good in this, but none of the supporting cast holds a candle, in my opinion, to Viggo Mortensen. He's phenomenal. His character has depth. Viggo commits to it. He begins the movie as the cleaner for one of the captains in the Russian mob, but he has a past, a moral compass, and a swagger that's really magnetic, don't you think?
Yeah, I wish that this movie had focused more on him specifically or somebody. He was definitely the most interesting character. I felt like this movie was kind of all over the map.
Yeah.
Narratively, it was like, oh, now it's about this, now it's about that. Naomi Watts should have just minded her own business, if you ask me. Like from the beginning.
Yeah.
Why she's getting mixed up in any of this? Every step of the way is just like, don't do that.
Yeah, I can see how it would happen if you encounter this young girl who gives birth, dies, in the process of childbirth, and she leaves behind this mysterious thing that maybe tells some of her story, but leave it there. And don't, this diary's in a language that I don't understand. I'm probably not going to read it.
Or maybe or maybe you focus exclusively on that story and try to sell the fact that she is getting involved in this shit, which she shouldn't be getting involved in.
Right.
It was kind of like it was like half and half,
Right. Yeah, I to go back to Viggo a little bit, I loved how much he put himself into this character. Apparently, he claimed that his performance was inspired by Vladimir Putin in the sense that he has kind of an unfazed look no matter what is happening. He took into account Putin's military and espionage background. I think this character reference hits a little different in 2023 than it did in 2007 now that we know what kind of monster Putin is.
He does have a bit of a Putin quality to him, which he's trying to go for, I think. I mean, even as his character, especially once you learn his background, he's definitely going for that, that Putin tough guy image.
Yes. It's funny that we talked about phones prior to this film because this is a movie that, while it was set in a contemporary time when it was made, just wouldn't make sense if it were made today because the whole crux of this story is needing to translate this journal, which relies on finding somebody who knows the language. And today you can just hold your phone up and translate in real time anything that's written. And, she doesn't need to find her way into the mob in order to get to the bottom of what this girl's story is.
Yeah. Don't get mixed up with the Russians. Generally is my rule.
Yeah. Let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So Ebert gave this 4 out of 4 stars, saying Eastern Promises is no ordinary crime thriller, just as Cronenberg is no ordinary director. Cronenberg has moved film by film into the top rank of directors, and here he is wisely reuniting with Mortensen, who digs so deeply into the role you may not recognize him at first. You definitely might not recognize parts of him that you see in this movie.
It's got more full frontal nudity than I've ever seen before in a regular movie.
This has a 3.9 on Letterboxd, probably my highest rated movie on Letterboxd this week. But I had to pluck a Letterboxd review for this, not because it fits with my take on business, but for another reason that I think you in particular might be very annoyed by. So from the 4.5 star review by Sergio Munez Esquire, he said, "New favorite Christmas movie just dropped."
There is Christmas in this movie.
Yeah, it happens at Christmas time.
Yeah, it's one of those movies.
A topic for another day. So yeah, that's my first pick for business. A little bit of an alternate take, but still, I think a sound interpretation.
Sound interpretation of business, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, solid movie. Worth a watch.
I like this one. This might be one of my favorite Cronenberg movies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird because he does so much body horror stuff, and I know how much he likes seeing people get ripped apart. And
Yeah, if they can't be naked, at least tear them to pieces.
yeah. Well, you got a lot of naked here.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move us on to also 2007. Great year for business.
Apparently a great year.
What a great year for business. Things were going great in 2007. The property business was great.
Yes.
This movie is 3:10 to Yuma, directed by James Mangold. This is filed under Dusty Business.
Dusty business.
Dusty Business. Back of the box. In Arizona in the late 1800s, infamous outlaw Ben Wade and his vicious gang of thieves and murderers have plagued the Southern Pacific Railroad. When Wade is captured, Civil War veteran Dan Evans, struggling to survive on his drought-plagued ranch, volunteers to deliver him alive to the 3:10 to Yuma, a train that will take the killer to trial. Tagline, time waits for one man.
Great tagline.
Yeah, that's really good.
That's so good.
Really good. A+.
Yes.
This is an adaptation of an Elmore Leonard short story, as well as a 1957 movie that was based on that short story. The original story is only like 9 or 10 pages. It's basically just the part where they're in the hotel room. That's the whole story.
Really?
Yeah, but the spine of the story is there. You kind of get a lot of what's going on, not all of it.
You can build around that.
And they build around it. But it's got, it's so much of this movie is like off book. But like it very much captures that Elmore Leonard style and spirit. It's got the great dialogue that's like loaded with meaning, and this simple story that like still has these twists and turns, characters with like these very well developed internal lives. But the two leads are outstanding in this movie. Christian Bale is fucking awesome.
Christian Bale is awesome. Russell Crowe's awesome, but also Ben Foster. He's so awesome.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
not a lead, but he is so awesome.
But yeah, like Russell Crowe, no less impressive. He's fucking great. He manages to be like menacing and charismatic at the same time. Like he's this time bomb that could just go off at any moment, but like you're still kind of drawn to it.
Yes. Yes.
But his character's a psychopath. Like absolute psychopath.
Yeah.
But somehow he's endearing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. He's frightening, but
He's thoughtful.
magnetic, and
He draws pictures, and he very much enjoys being himself.
it does make you wonder if characters like this really existed, because there's such nuance and, I don't know, dimension to his character that it just seems like if you're a bad guy, you're either a really bad guy or you're not a bad guy. I don't know. From that time, I don't know. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions.
I think you might be jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, is it fair to say people like, if you're a murderous psychopath, you can't also enjoy doing some artwork now and then, or
Well, maybe you're getting at what I like about this movie so much is that Westerns in general are so often very black and white in how the characters are drawn. And this character does not fit into the stereotypical Western mold. And I think that's great.
Think about Russell Crowe between this movie and like The Pope's Exorcist or Unhinged.
Okay.
Like the transition he's gone through. Like he was not a thin man in 2007, but he was like cool and handsome, and like now he's playing these like obese psychopaths.
Thick.
But
He's leaning into his thickness.
But there's always been this darkness to him. He's got secrets behind his eyes. I think. There's something going on with Russell Crowe's characters, but like the chemistry between these two guys the whole time is so good.
Yeah.
But this is just a well-crafted movie from top to bottom. Like everything, like the supporting cast is great. The only person who I felt was miscast was Luke Wilson.
Yes.
Who I don't dislike him, but I don't believe him as anything other than like Luke Wilson.
Yeah, he's not.
You can put him in. You can put him in the old time, but like Luke Wilson isn't who he was in this movie, which is basically like a redneck Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Like I don't know. I didn't buy it, but so he really stuck out like a sore thumb. But otherwise, everybody in this movie is great.
I agree. Especially Ben Foster.
Especially Ben Foster. Yeah, let's not forget Ben Foster.
Well, I mean, I remember talking about Ben Foster when we did 30 Days of Night, another movie with a 3 in front of the title, and he's teasing a little bit of what you get in 3:10 to Yuma, and I just love how, I mean, he is the true, I mean, when we're talking about black and white characters, he's a fucking villain in this, and he's great at it.
So good. Logan Lerman, the kid who's the son in the movie, that's a tough part, and he's really good in this part. It's like a coming of age story for him in a lot of ways, and like, it's not a movie about him, but like his emotional arc like pushes this story all the way through.
It does.
But the Western action is really really good and intense.
Yeah.
Stagecoach robbery is great. The cinematography is fantastic. It's just like it checks all these boxes. It's doing all these things right. But then there's the railroad in this movie, which is Southern Pacific, and they're the business that like pretty much runs the show here.
Yeah.
That's like a lot of big business. They kind of move into an area and they exert their will over it until they get what they want. And when the railroad comes to town, the land around it becomes expensive. It's like any other sort of land development. Yeah. Which is kind of what's going on here. But like the people on this land now become a nuisance, and that's how Christian Bale gets caught up in this. Like, as the one character says, is like, this land is worth more if you're not here. Mm-hmm. I don't care if you can pay your rent. Like I don't want you to be able to pay your rent. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point of this shit, is to get you out of here. Mm-hmm. And so this plot of this movie is set into motion by the big business that runs this town, because they want something, and then so they decide that so they need people's help to protect what they're using to kick them off the land.
Well, it's a coincidence that this is a railroad company, because literally what they're trying to do is
railroad people.
Yeah.
That's where it came from, right?
I have to believe it, because no one is going to stand in their way, and they're going to get what they want.
And throw their money around and to get whatever they want. Yeah. There's even that part at some point where one of the thieves comes into town. He's like, "Hey, your money just got held up by these guys out there, to get them off the scent or whatever." But the railroad guy was like, "Well, did you do something about it? Like, why didn't you stop them?" And it's like, as far as he knows, it's just some guy, right? Yeah. Like, why is it our job to protect your fucking money? Fuck you.
Yeah, seriously, right.
So this just kind of illustrates how business can just act as this impersonal force that is just subtly controlling the lives of everybody that's connected to it.
Yes.
I think this is one of the best Westerns of this century. I mean, there's not a lot of those. Letterboxd user Tom Spearing agrees with me and gave it 4 stars. And he begins his review like this. "I've always wondered, did gunslingers really drink whiskey to quench their thirst? If I just rocked up at a saloon after a long, sweaty, dusty ride, that wouldn't be my first choice of beverage." And I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
But this movie, when I watched it, I had a similar question, and I wondered how did these old time saloons charge for whiskey? Because every time, and granted, this is based 100% on movies and television shows. But they're always like rolling up and just being like, just pour out a bunch of whiskey. And they're always pouring it very willy-nilly. Yeah. And then sometimes you're just like, leave the bottle. Like,
just put the bottle in front of the customer.
How do you charge for that? I want to know what the system is. I figured that was like a thing that people would be like, just give me the bottle. Well, how do you charge for that?
Right. Now, funny you say this, because
that's business.
It's business. I never wondered about how they charge for it. I wondered how bad it must have been, because if they're throwing it around like they are, it couldn't have been very good.
Yeah, I wonder, because like back in the day, beer was only like 2 or 3% alcohol. Is whiskey kind of similar? Because they didn't have the technology necessarily. I mean, theoretically, maybe they didn't have the technology to make it as high test as it is nowadays.
This should have been the plot of Back to the Future 3, getting to the bottom of what the alcohol situation was like in the Old West.
Yeah, but but so this is a great look at the undue power of big business over a community, and I'm throwing it up on the staff shelf this week.
I love this movie. I'm glad. Always looking for a reason to rewatch, and this is a great pick. Well, we're staying in 2007.
Yeah, 3 in a row.
What a businessy year this was.
Bam, bam, bam.
Yeah. And I'm going to
invest in property, people. It's 2007. It's never going down.
Nope. I'm going to the risky business section of the store for Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. Back of the box synopsis here. When two brothers organize the robbery of their parents' jewelry store, the job goes horribly wrong, triggering a series of events that send them and their family hurtling towards a shattering climax. Tagline here, no one was supposed to get hurt.
I like that one.
Yeah, it's pretty good. You know, it
belongs on the poster.
Yeah, it suggests that somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And the wrong people.
Right. So if you were looking for a way to get your doctor to prescribe you Xanax, this might be it. This movie is an unending series of mostly bad people making downright horrible decisions, one after the other. Uncut Gems is like this, but not like this.
Yeah. I don't know that I would classify them as bad people. I mean, well, maybe a little bit, some of them, but like not everybody.
Not everybody.
Yeah, the world makes them bad. I don't know.
The world makes them bad. I mean, I think that. Well, we'll get into this.
They're desperate people.
They're desperate.
That's how
desperate
I look
people.
At it.
That's maybe a better way to put it. Mostly desperate people making downright horrible decisions. So as this film unfolds, it's a study in anxiety. The many things that these characters have gotten themselves involved in on paper, I think would even kind of seem inconceivable. But in execution, it works. It's not comfortable by any means, but they pull it off. The story holds together. This is a Sidney Lumet film. In fact, it was his last film before he died. And Lumet directed some fucking bangers. He's got 12 Angry Men to his name, Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon. He also had quite a few duds. But I think this guy knows how to make a great film, and this is certainly one of them, in my opinion. At the center of the story is a family. Two brothers, played by Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan Hawke. And Albert Finney is their father. Michael Shannon shows up pretty briefly. And, of course, we get Marissa Tomei. Everyone here is at the top of their game. Why did I choose this for our business theme? Well, let's get to the business component. So quite literally, we have a family business at the center of this story. The parents own a jewelry store. The two sons decide to rob it. But we also get family business in the sense that there's some very challenging things that every member of this family is engaged in and dealing with, sometimes together, sometimes apart, always awful. And, both brothers need money pretty desperately. I think, you were right to say that these are desperate people, but they need it for very different reasons. And their motivation for deciding to rob their parents' jewelry store is because they know this business. They know where the vault is. They know the value of everything inside. They know the schedule. And so they thought who would be working at the store when they went in to rob it, or when they planned to rob it. So obviously things don't go as intended. But it's this supposed understanding of this literal family business that motivates the brothers to do everything that leads to the complicated emotional family business that follows. And that's what I like about this. It's not afraid to get into some complicated, difficult situations and business that these characters need to work through without leavening the negative with an equal balance of positive.
Yeah.
Things just kind of steadily go downhill.
Right. Well, they're not making good choices.
No. You're forced to go into the swamp with these people, and it's tough. It's uncomfortable, awkward, agonizing, kind of panic-inducing and blunt at times. But I enjoyed the ride. Not a lot of movies are willing to just take it down this deep.
Yeah, it goes to some dark places.
It does. Yeah.
Almost you're like, how did this happen? How do you get mixed up in this?
Yeah. Right.
And then like the drug thing where he's going to the guy getting shot up.
Yeah.
What's that about? Because like this is something we encountered in Action Jackson. I like to bring it to Action Jackson anytime I can.
Oh boy.
Where Vanity was going to Craig T. Nelson's house, and he'd be like, "I got you this like great heroin,"
Yeah,
and like inject her with it, and it was like this big thing, and it was a big deal that she would come over, and that would happen, and kind of the same thing's going on here, and like. I've always been under the impression that heroin was cheap. Like, what's going on here? Like, why is it like this? Like, what is it like? Something else?
Definitely had me wondering too, because I don't think of heroin as a designer drug.
No,
but in the case of this film, the person who's dealing the heroin is, I mean, an incredibly rich drug dealer, and seems to be offering people a premium heroin experience where. You know, they go in and...
Maybe it's just like the really good, pure stuff.
You know that it's as clean as heroin can be.
Yeah.
In a world where...
But even then, it's like, take it home.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Buy it yourself. Like, why are they paying extra to, like, have him do it for? Because he's not good at customer service.
No, he's not. But perhaps that's what it's all about, is that it keeps... the addiction component maybe at arm's length. It's like, well, no, I'm going to go to this place. I'm going to have my entire experience there from the high to the come down.
Right, because I have a job.
Right.
I'm mystery solved.
Yeah, at least that was my interpretation.
Yeah,
but
that's not what was going on in Action Jackson, though. Definitely not.
No. But yeah, I like, that's kind of what I like about this movie, is that it's not afraid to get into some complicated, difficult things. I loved the performances in this. I'm a sucker for Ethan Hawke. We know that. He plays somewhat of a pathetic character here, kind of the modern day version of Christian Bale's character from 3:10 to Yuma. And I like everything that he's in, but
he's great as that guy too.
He is.
Where it's just like, I thought I had this handled, and now I'm in way over my head, and I still haven't handled, right? Like I still totally have it. It's like, okay, man.
Right. It hasn't spun out of control, even though it has spun out of control. Even though it has.
It's just like he still thinks he has it.
Right. But Philip Seymour Hoffman is always stupendous and so fucking good here. I think roles like this just make it more painful that we lost him when he did, when we did. But yeah, he's knocking it out of the park, and truly, like,
he's creepy in this.
He's creepy and scary, and also pathetic in a way.
Yeah, he's like this pathetic guy that you're scared of because you don't really know what he's capable of. Because he's just so pathetic.
Yeah, not only acting this character, but the character is acting to everyone that he's who's a part of his life in the movie. You know, there's definitely some things behind the scenes that he's shielding the world from. But Albert Finney is also pretty great.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He's is he still alive? I don't know that he is.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, but wonderful in this. So critics love this. Time Magazine's Robert Schnickel said that at one level, the movie is a wonderfully intricate exploration of family dysfunction. At another, it's a coolly controlled examination of increasingly insane criminal ineptitude. Either way you look at it, this is a hypnotizing film from one of our great masters. So it averages a somewhat lower than expected 3.7 on Letterboxd, but I did enjoy the one 4-star review by Felipe, who called this the forbidden chapter of the Before trilogy. which I thought was fun.
I reject that.
Yeah. But nevertheless, I think it's worth a watch, and throwing it on the shelf as our last 2007 business movie.
Great choice.
But a business movie nonetheless.
Great choice. Yeah, I'm gonna take us away from the year 2007 finally.
Yeah, let's get out of there.
I'm going to choose the movie Steel. This stars Shaquille O'Neal as Superman or something. Just kidding. This movie's from 1979 called Steel. You can find this filed under The High Life.
Oh, I like it.
Here's the back of the box. It's too long. Mike Catton was once a world-renowned construction foreman, but an accident left him with a serious fear of heights. Unable to climb the big skyscrapers while under construction, he retired and became a truck driver. But when an old friend needs him to help put up a building, And when the old friend gets harassed and threatened by an evil corporate type, it actually says that on the back of the box. By an evil corporate type, which also is wrong.
Right, yeah, I agree.
He comes out of retirement and assembles the creme de la creme of the construction world. Together, they race against time to finish the building while the evil corporate type tries to stop them. Tagline, The Magnificent Eight. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it gets across what they're going for.
Yeah.
You know, it's the Magnificent Seven, except they're construction dudes.
Yes.
But yeah, Lee Majors is the world-renowned foreman. So he's basically Dalton from Roadhouse, except of the construction world instead of bar security. And it's also not his friend who needs help with the building. It's his friend's daughter.
Yeah.
He's never met this woman before.
No.
George Kennedy is his friend, and he's the head of this construction company. And they're putting up this skyscraper in St. Louis, and he's like one of those guys that is very hands-on.
Yeah.
He's like, I own the company, but like I'm gonna like help build it. And so he's going up top, as they say. And then while he's up there, some shit goes down, and like he tries to help, and like it doesn't go well, and then he falls off the building and dies. And so his daughter is like, I'm gonna finish this building, and she only has 3 weeks to put up 9 floors.
It seems inconceivable that, and admittedly, I don't know anything about building buildings.
Yeah,
but when it's pitched in a movie, it's my take was like, well, that can't be done.
But they're also just putting up the frame.
They are.
The steel frame. All that has to be up is the steel frame. And as long as that's up, they hit the threshold.
It still seems like a lot to me.
I wouldn't know, to be honest. I honestly couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
It sounds like it is a lot, and that's kind of the point of the movie.
Yeah.
But like, they do it. Like, it's a nearly impossible schedule. I think that is the point of the movie. But these guys are like the best.
Yeah.
know. And it's largely structured as a heist movie. Like Lee Majors travels the country recruiting this team, which how long did that take? They only had how many weeks? But like every guy has like an I'm in moment.
Yeah.
And they all have like the stereotypical roles. There's the crazy explosives guy and the womanizing European, because that's how Europeans are.
Yeah.
The no nonsense tough guy and whatever. But this is the crew they're going to talk about forever, right? Which is an actual line that a character says, which seems crazy. Like, there can't be guys that good at this job.
Right. It's so funny. One thought that I couldn't divorce myself from while watching this was that this movie walked so that Oppenheimer could run, because Oppenheimer is the same fucking story. Essentially, it's like this mad dash search for the best people in the world to build this bomb. It's a race against time, and it's an inconceivable task. And here we have Steele kind of doing the same thing with a
That is
building.
a wild reading of this movie, but I love it. I love it. Basically, the Oppenheimer of construction.
Yes.
Wow, yeah. But it also plays kind of like a sports movie,
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Because, I guess that kind of always has the getting the team together part of it, too. And there's not really like an opponent in this movie, like in the same way there would be in a sports movie. But there is a clear victory at the end. Like, we feel like we've won something when they build this building. They heist the building.
Well, it's funny that you cited the tagline that you did, because I thought you were going to go with an alternate tagline that I've encountered for this, which plays into both the Oppenheimer take and the sports movie take, which is they reached for an impossible dream and built a miracle.
Wow. Whoa. That is grandiose.
Yeah,
and it should be.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah, this really shows like how the real estate business is a dirty, dirty business.
Oh yeah.
Like most business is dirty on some level, but like it feels like real estate's probably the dirtiest. It seems like, and it seems like in your head you're like, okay, somebody buys a piece of property, and then they build something on it, and then they either rent it or sell it. And that's how you make your money. That's never how it works.
No.
That's not how it works. The banks that run everything, like we've learned. But like, you'd think it would be that simple, but that's literally never how it works.
It's funny because we talked a little bit about this with Glengarry Glen Ross, which is a different dimension of the real estate business. but also from a time when the real estate world was different than it is today. And here again, you get that where like they're still building. I mean, yes, we're still building buildings in 2023, but not the way the world was decades ago. And it's an interesting thing to look back on.
Yeah, this movie's a ton of fun.
It is.
It's just it doesn't do anything amazingly well. It looks kind of like a TV movie, although I don't think it was.
Yes.
So it doesn't. It's not an amazing looking movie, but like I mean, the stunts are cool. I mean, not stunts, but like I think these are just actual iron workers doing their job.
Set pieces, I suppose.
The set pieces. Like these guys are up on top of buildings and like doing shit. Like that's just like impressive to see. And all this is reflected in my 4-star rating. And there's a Letterboxd user named Nolan Barth that agrees with me. His review says, "There's so many burly blue-collar guys. It makes me want to chug a beer, strap on a hard hat, and build a giant phallic skyscraper because that's what men do." So,
in this case, women.
And in this case, women.
Yeah.
So I'm putting it up on the staff recommendation shelf this week for the topic of business.
Well, I guarantee our customers have not seen this. It's fucking hard to find.
It is hard to find.
Of course we have it. That's why we run such a fundamentally solid business.
Yes.
But yeah, I had to poke around. It took me a while to even find this on IMDb. It's just you have to dig.
Yeah, it does not star Shaquille O'Neal, which is one of the major problems with it. But it's on YouTube.
It's out there. Yeah.
It exists.
We'll go see it because it's a good movie.
Yeah, it was. It's just it's super fun and like I said, you really do like. At the end, you're like, "Fuck yeah, they did it!" You know? There's a good feeling to this.
Good on you guys.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a dad movie, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I'm going to round things out with my final pick for business. We're going to 1996 from the Show Me the Business section of the store. And what I am choosing is Jerry Maguire. So back of the box synopsis, in case you're unfamiliar. Jerry Maguire used to be a typical sports agent, willing to do just about anything he could to get the biggest possible contracts for his clients, plus a nice commission for himself. Then, one day, he suddenly has second thoughts about what he's really doing. When he voices these doubts, he ends up losing his job and all of his clients, save Rod Tidwell, an egomaniacal football player. Tagline, everybody loved him, everybody disappeared. So I'm not fond of this tagline because I don't think everybody loved Jerry Maguire. And we'll get back to that because that ties into something that I found myself thinking about at the end of this movie. But before we get there, I was initially reluctant to put this on a shelf because who hasn't seen Jerry Maguire? But then I remembered that this movie is from 1996. It's not running on repeat on TNT anymore. Perhaps there are swaths of people that haven't been shown the money or introduced to the Quan.
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone knows that the human head weighs 8 pounds.
I don't think I had seen this since 1996 or maybe 7.
Really?
Yeah.
So I, for one reason or another, watched this countless times between 1996 and maybe 2010, and then it fell off the radar for me, and then I came back to it. But boy, I've seen this movie a bunch.
Wow.
And I guess I assumed that most of the world has, perhaps more than once, but I don't know now.
I'm probably an outlier for people who are our age.
Yeah.
I'm sure the younger kids these days aren't that familiar with it.
Yeah, perhaps not. Although, there are lines from this movie that were embedded in culture for a period in time. I mean, this movie was a phenomenon when it was released, and Show Me the Money is one of them. There's a lot of very quotable lines in this script. And I think there's something for everyone here. I don't know if this is a sports movie, a rom-com, a midlife crisis movie. In hindsight, it feels like a rom-com with a sports glaze that makes dudes say, yeah, I'll watch that. It's a sports film. But I think the truth is this is a movie about love.
It's definitely a rom-com.
Yeah, that's probably the safest category to put it in.
Yeah, I think so. That's what it seems to me because like the characters are making the psychotic decisions that people in rom-coms make that make no sense in real life.
They are, yeah. If we weren't a video store that had a section like Show Me the Business, we would definitely put it among the rom-coms. But yeah, we're a better video store than most. So obviously we get Tom Cruise here. This is quintessential Cruise, and another case of him not seeming like he's really acting. He's exactly the right guy for this role when this movie was made, and this is before Tom became action figure Tom Cruise, and it's also made during a time when it's believable for him to be in love with a woman, which we segued out of.
To have a human relationship.
Yeah. He's awkward here, a little bit unhinged. And opposite him, we get Renee Zellweger in what I think is her best performance, in my opinion. I mean, she kind of faded from the spotlight a little bit in recent years, but she had a moment.
She did those Bridget Jones movies, which I have never seen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I can't really think of what else she's
in Chicago. But
also never seen.
Yeah, this is her at the top of her game, in my opinion. I think she looks breathtaking in this. She balances the Cruise crazy with a pretty even-tempered sense of like calm and authenticity. And then there's Cuba Gooding Jr., who is somehow wackier than Cruise. And this is probably...
I'm sure not in real life.
Probably not in real life. But I think this is also his best performance. And again, it's hard for me to summon a lot of his roles, but this one just stands head and shoulders above anything else I've seen him in.
Very good. Regina King's great.
King's fucking amazing. Jay Moore is good.
The MVP, maybe not MVP, but I think like the straw that stirs this drink is Bonnie Hunt. I think she makes the movie work.
Bonnie Hunt is good. I thought you were going to say Jonathan Lipnicki, the little kid.
He's good, but like,
yeah,
he's fine. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't mind him, and normally I mind kids.
Yeah.
And so bonus points for that.
It's hard to get just even an acceptable kid performance, and this is a pretty great one.
Yeah, there's nothing to really argue against.
Right.
He's good.
So in spite of all these great performances, and I'm glad you mentioned Bonnie Hunt and Regina King. I mean, Regina King's a fucking boss. Cameron Crowe deserves a lot of credit here because he's making this into the special thing that it is. It's a sentimental film without being sappy. And I think you get a lot of the things that make Cameron Crowe movies great, such as deep, well-written characters, a sharply written script, an incredible soundtrack. I mean, he's master at that.
Yeah.
And excellent directing of the cast. So why did I choose this? Fundamentally, this is a movie about a man starting a business. That shouldn't be an emotionally compelling thing.
I mean, it's about him starting a kind of almost a revenge business.
A revenge business, yeah. But he discovers himself while he's building his company. He learns who he is. He's rebuilding his career. He's rebuilding himself. And, the business is the vehicle that allows that to happen.
I mean, we talked about how this might be a romantic comedy because of the terrible decisions that the characters make, which are reminiscent of romantic comedies.
Right.
One of which is like the terrible business decision of like getting romantically involved with the one person that works for you.
Yeah. Your entire staff.
Yeah. Your entire staff. You're literally dating your whole staff.
Yeah. Yeah. In love with the company.
Yes. Which is like bad for your relationship and just catastrophic for this business.
Oh, it sure is. Yeah. It's it's a poor choice.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect of business here that I find fascinating because this movie casts a pretty poignant spotlight on sports as a business, and especially the NFL. We get a glimpse into the side of sports that hadn't been really featured in film predominantly prior to this. And to think that the NFL has morphed into an even more monstrous beast than it was 30 years ago.
Or just sports in general.
Oh, yeah, sports in general. It's kind of crazy. So you can't help but to think that when you're looking back on this. And I think this movie has aged pretty well, but yeah, the sports world in general just isn't quite the behemoth that it is today.
It's also important to note that agents had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
Not that these guys shouldn't be trying to make all the money they can, but like agents are the guys that were like, well, no, my job is to not only get you the big contract to play football, but also to get in the commercial for this and the TV deal for this and the whatever for this. And now you're on Instagram for that. And like, that's why like the sports world has turned into this thing where the sports is like incidental.
Yeah. Right. It's secondary. And yeah, when you see these guys talking about endorsement deals, and even the scene where Rod Tidwell is potentially starring in a local car commercial, it's like wow, we're so far past that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this has become something of a classic. We're 30 years removed from it. A little bit surprising that Cuba Gooding Jr. and Renee Zellweger are not as big of a star today as they were back then. But, I want to talk for a moment about Tom Cruise because, he's a Swiss Army knife of an actor and lots of tools. In 2023, I think a lot of those tools are broken. But in 1996, everything is here. He's vulnerable, awkward, weird, charming, confident, a little bit broken, which we don't usually see with Tom Cruise. And then I look at this movie and I think about, has it become a weird portrait of Tom Cruise, the man, somebody who's not emotional, bad at intimacy, at least that's the perception nowadays, who in 2023 does not have a wife. Back when this came out, I think it seemed inconceivable that would be his trajectory. I mean, he's become an incredible success professionally, but in terms of his life,
right,
there's a lot here in this character that mirrors who he is today, and that's kind of wild.
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is a fascinating character.
He
to
really
pick
is.
Apart.
Yeah,
it's hard to pin him down because we don't really know how human he really is.
No, we don't. We don't know. We might not even be getting the human Tom Cruise anymore. It might be like Robot Cruise and human Cruise is in a freezer somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, even in this movie, up until the very end, even then, you're just you're not really sure who Jerry Maguire, what he's really trying to do.
Right.
Who is he?
Because he seems like he is living his life acting.
Yes.
And that's what Tom Cruise seems like he's doing.
Yes. And everything that Renee Zellweger is worried about, oh my God, this whole, this is just this is a fever dream. Then all of a sudden we got married and what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
She's 100% right about all of that.
Right. Because
she fell in love with this guy that doesn't exist either.
Right. She fell in love with a glimpse of a person that emerged briefly to write this fucking mission statement.
He only existed for 3 hours.
Yeah. He was drunk. He ate bad pizza, and he met Jerry and Charlotte at Kinko's, and
she wasn't even there for it.
Right. Yeah.
She just read his blog post. This is basically The Social Network.
It is,
but for sports agents.
So I don't know. I think. Right now, this is a fascinating movie to look back on, whether you've seen it or not. If you've seen it, watch it again for the potential commentary on Tom Cruise as a guy. But if you haven't seen it, I think there's definitely some business happening here that's interesting and makes for a pretty good story.
I mean, as far as business goes, this is a good illustration of when it's time to strike out on your own because
yes.
He did the right thing, I mean, obviously he got fired, but obviously, the right thing in that moment is to be I need to do my own thing and get my own clients, and if I have an ethos, I have to live by it,
right?
And a business is a good way to do that.
I couldn't help but to notice that, there is never a world where he would be fired at a restaurant and be allowed to go back to work for the day
in
order to try and steal all of the clients from this company that he no longer works for.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure why they allowed that to happen. That was a weird thing, but.
So the last thing I'll say about this is there were some interesting casting decisions that were considered leading up to where they landed. And I really do think that everyone who ended up in this movie is exactly right for the parts that they were in. But this is a movie that was written for Tom Hanks, which I cannot imagine.
He's too nice. Made it work.
I don't know. He's too nice. Tom Cruise is smarmy and just... He can do this thing where he seems inauthentic. It wouldn't have been the
same. It would have been more like You've Got Mail or something.
Probably. A ton of people were considered for the role of Dorothy. The one person who was in contention until the very end was Connie Britton, who ended up in Friday Night Lights years later. Okay. And I could see her in that, but I still think Renee Zellweger is so just innocent and... But this is the right time in her career to cast her, and
she
I just
looks
love
like somebody
her.
That would fall for this.
Yeah. Indeed. So I still love this movie. It gets a 3.6 on Letterboxd, but I don't know. It's a special one. I love going back to it. So putting it on the shelf is our last business film.
Yeah, check it out.
Rob, we did indeed get down to business tonight. Nothing.
We're so deep down here.
Nothing but strictly business. And in so doing, we talked about 6 films. The business movies we chose were Blackberry, Eastern Promises, 3:10 to Yuma, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, Steel, and Jerry Maguire.
If you like websites, go to rewindvideopod.com where you can drop us a line, get on our mailing list, or find us on social media if that's still a thing.
Yeah. Is it still out there? Who knows?
I think so. There's a couple out there. Letterboxd, get us on Letterboxd.
I have a feeling that social media is going to disappear long before the video rental store will.
You're totally right. This business is bulletproof.
It is. Well, from here, we're switching our attention to stories that have been told not once, but twice, maybe even more than twice. Our upcoming theme is remakes.
Maybe even more than twice. Our upcoming theme is remakes.
As usual, we will have 6 films to recommend. In the meantime, feel free to stop by the counter for a movie to watch, and we will see you next time.
Be kind, recommend. He'll say it.